When we think about the business model canvas for food and beverage companies, I think the most important thing I want to tell you is that making a delicious product is not enough. It is a starting point, but there's more that goes into growing that business. There's two tools that we use, and this came from Silicon Valley. It's been used through the National Science Foundation, National Institutes of Health, and it's taught in schools all over the United States. Business Model Canvas and Customer Discovery. Those are our two tools. Here are the two books that started it. Business Model Generation is the book that explains the business model generation. That's the one I recommend. It is a visually interesting book, which means that lots of different people will be able to read it and learn from it. The 4 Steps to the Epiphany is written more like a textbook, and not everyone loves reading textbooks. So if you're a book-oriented person, if you learn by reading, then start with Business Model Generation. It is available on Amazon. You can buy it new or used, and you can actually find it in different languages also, which for some people can be really helpful. If you would like to fill in your business model canvas right now, then take a moment and Google business model canvas and then add the word editable. And you'll see a bunch of different versions: Word, PowerPoint, Canva, Miro, lots of different ways that you can fill in the business model canvas. I'll go through the squares or rectangles on the business model canvas 2 different ways. The first way, we're just going to learn what each one means. The second time we go through it, we're going to talk about the relationships. This is how we begin. We start with our best guess, what we think is true about our business. We think customer segments, it's this kind of a person or this kind of a business. And we think about a price because we have an idea of what's out there in the market. You think about where to sell it because you've seen similar products or alternative products sold in particular places. Those are all guesses. What we do is we go out and we ask questions. We find out what's really happening in the marketplace, and we replace those guesses with facts, with data. When you have that data, then you have a more complete business model. Let's start with customer segments, which is all the way to the right. And I've had many people ask me, why is it all the way on the right? Why doesn't it start in the upper left like most English documents do? That is because the entire business is pushing us towards customers. The customer is the focus of the business. I want to ask you, who is your customer? It's very easy to say hungry people or people who are thirsty because people need to eat, but that's just not true. You've got to focus because you're just starting out or you're in the early stages of your business. Who do you want to focus on and who do you want to ignore? That is my question for you. The way we talk about customers is we say it's a person who is. So it might be, my customers are people who are between the ages of this and that, and they live in rural, urban, or suburban communities, or they live on a university campus or in a retirement home, or whatever. You describe the people. Now, there's a different element here with food and beverage, and that is we think about the person who's going to consume it. That's the consumer, the person who will actually eat or drink. And then the other level is who's going to buy it at a retail wholesale level. And that's usually the buyer. Now, sometimes these two people are the same. If you sell at a farmer's market, The person who's buying the food is typically the person who's going to consume it. But if you're going to sell to retail grocery, if you're going to sell to military exchanges, then there's someone who makes the decision to buy your product before it becomes available to that consumer. So how we think of this is there's a business to business, and then there's a business to consumer. There's these two different levels of your business, and they're both important. For business to business, let me start with business to consumer. For business to consumer, this person is buying for themselves or for their household. This could be parents of school-aged children. This is people who have food allergies, or people who have strong food preferences, people who, for religious reasons, avoid some foods. Business to business, that's the person who's buying because it is their job to buy products. That could be category buyers for a retail grocery chain of stores. That could be the farmers market managers who, if you convince them, then they give you access to the consumers. On the business model canvas, we generally just stack them. We write them all in the customer segment box, and we just write one above the other. B to C and describe them, B to B and describe them. I see an error on my slide. This one, business to B to B, that should be B to B, like that. Apologies. All right, next. Think about who are your most important consumers. For early businesses, young businesses, people just starting out, you cannot sell to the whole world all at once. You start small, you typically start local, and you build your business over time. So if you think small and local, who are the most important people to sell to? Who is actually going to buy your product? Who is willing to pay the price? Think about who is your most important customer. Getting this right makes everything else easier. Getting this right makes everything else easier. The next question I have for you is, how does your customer want to receive the value? Which what that really means is, where does your customer want to go to buy this product, or how do they want to be sold to? So examples of this would be a farmer's market is a distribution channel. Purchasing online selling online is a distribution channel. Selling at local specialty markets, selling through Sprouts, Whole Foods, selling your product to restaurants or bars for them to serve. That's a distribution channel. The next one that we think about is, what does your customer value? So let's talk about the consumers first. If the consumer is someone who highly values pork-free eating, then part of the value is honoring their faith or honoring their values. That's what's important to them. If you're selling ice cream, what the customer may value is cold, creamy, and celebration. There's lots of different things you can put here. You can put logical, thoughtful answers here, but the reality is that a lot of purchases by humans, not just me and you, but humans in general, buy largely by emotion. Think about the emotions that your product evokes. Think about, is this something that helps them to feel good about their good health, or it helps them to feel in control of their lives? It helps them to avoid health problems, which they're afraid of or really dislike, having an upset stomach or Sometimes people who have food allergies, they get itchy skin and bumps and hives and things. Is your food or beverage something that's very celebratory, that people feel good when they're consuming? Or is it something that gives them comfort because it reminds them of home or it reminds them of a good time in their life? Think about the emotions as well as the logical part, but the emotions first. And then the logic part of it are things like it is somehow better than an alternative. We'll come back to that later. How are you going to make money? For food and beverage, we typically answer this by saying product sales. Although we have some members in the incubator and accelerator who are working on subscriptions, and that's a different kind of a revenue stream because it's recurring. Product sales are typically every day is a new day and you're constantly selling. A subscription's a little bit different because it has some guaranteed recurring revenue over some period of time. And then this box on the business model canvas is super important. This is customer relationships. It's called, I think of it as sales and marketing. How will you get customers? How will you keep your customers? And how will you grow your relationship with them? And so I've highlighted those three words: get, keep, grow. How will you get customers is, in marketing terms, customer acquisition. How will you keep their business? That's customer retention. How do you keep them so that they continue to come back and buy from you? And then how will you grow your relationship with them? That might be anything from a referral program or offering new products over time. Customer relationships is a small box, but it's actually one of the most important parts of making your business a success. And so I want to add, it is okay to put social media in customer relationships because that's something you can control. It is not acceptable to put word of mouth anywhere on the canvas because word of mouth is something outside of your control. And on the BMC, we're really focused on what can you do to grow your business, not so much the external forces. We've just talked about the right side of the business. This is front stage. It is customer facing, whether you're selling to businesses or consumers. That is facing the customer. Now we're going to go backstage, which is more operations and finance and making the business work. The next two boxes we'll talk about are key resources and right above it, key activities. This is important because this is where you summarize all the things that you need to have and need to do to run your business. What resources must you have? So think about this. Do you need a telephone, a laptop, an iPad? Do you need a car? Do you need kitchen equipment? Do you need it in your house or do you need a shared kitchen or a commercial kitchen? Do you need suppliers? Do you need a recipe, a patent, a trademark? Intellectual property in general. What are all the key resources that you need to run your business? And then let's go up one. What are your key activities? Your key activities are in part reflected on the right side of the canvas. So one of your key activities is selling, marketing, distribution, and then think about this. You've got to handle the financial side of the business. Issuing invoices, collections sometimes, and making sure that your bills are paid. Those are all key activities. You'll have to actually produce the product. You'll do product development probably. You may do packaging development. You may have to maintain some of your customer relationships by doing special events or sometimes just investing time in maintaining good relationships with your customers and your vendors. Key activities, it doesn't have to be, and key resources, it doesn't have to be a really super detailed list, but it should cover all of these big categories of the things that you'll be doing to run your business. In reality, for a lot of small businesses, there are some key resources that you don't have, and there's some key activities that you can't do just because you're a small business and sometimes just because it's you running the business. In that case, you have key partners to help you. Key partners can be service providers, suppliers. They can be industry partners. It can be the Georgia Tech Food and Beverage Accelerator. It could be a key partner for you. These are people who help you with your business one way or another. And you can think of this very broadly about who is helping you to run your business or to get things done. And then the last thing we'll talk about here is the costs. And this is, think about big buckets, the big categories of your costs. So production is a cost, operations is a cost, rent, salary, ingredients, big categories. We don't need to know the cost of each ingredient at this point because we're thinking not about just the product, but we're thinking about the costs of the business, the big picture. So I want to run through it again because if all we had to do was fill in the blanks, then we wouldn't need it as a canvas. We would just have it as a list. But there's relationships between the boxes, which is why they're organized a specific way. And what I have found teaching this over the years is that sometimes this doesn't make sense to a person until they see the relationships between the boxes. So the customer segment and the value proposition, that's who are you going to sell to and why are they going to buy? Those two things together are called product market fit. When you know exactly who your customer is and exactly why they want to buy, that is product market fit. And sometimes people will write it PMF, product market fit. If you have a guess about who your customer is and you aren't really sure about what they value, then you don't have product market fit yet. You're still exploring, which is where a lot of companies are right now. The channel is the distribution channel. It's how you deliver the value to the customer. The key activities and the key resources are the things you do to deliver value to the customer. The partners are organizations or people who help you with the key activities and the key resources, the things that you can't do on your own. The the costs are all driven by key activities and key resources. If there's a cost and it's not related to a key activity or a key resource, then I'm wondering, what is this cost? Is it necessary or have I not contemplated how it fits into my business model? And all revenue comes from customers. Now, there may be other money that comes into the business. You may get investment or a loan, or you could do a Kickstarter campaign. That would be over in the category of partners and resources. Revenue always comes from customers. And now there's one box left, and it's customer relationships. And I want to point out that it is in the heart location on the box, and it's even got a little heart in the box. And that is the engine of your business. That's what makes everything run. That's get, keep, grow. Customer acquisition, customer retention, and building your business with your customer. I want to highlight this again. Key activities, key resources, That's where all your costs come from. Customers drive all of your revenue. You start out with all of these guesses. You do customer discovery and you learn what's really happening out in the marketplace. You get data. And then as you fill it in, it becomes a complete and valid business model canvas.